What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. We need to talk a little football. I was thinking about the rookie quarterbacks, so want to dive into that. I had a scouting buddy send me something that kind of got me thinking when it comes to Trevor Lawrence and the passion and love of football. Jerry made a comment because he talks every single week, like twice a week, radio shows, post game, that just kind of got me thinking. And of course, Kauff on campus. We do it every Wednesday. Just hit on some big stories in college football. Yeah, we'll just dive in. We got a pretty big game. I don't know if you heard. Program called Alabama is hosting a program called Georgia. Kind of a big one. So we'll dive into that coming up. But before we discuss some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Game Time. Game Time. Here's the thing. What do you want to do? You want to go to a concert? Do you want to go see your favorite artist? Do you want to go to a football game? NFL, college? Baseball playoffs about to start. Dodgers look pretty good. You live in Southern California. NBA right around the corner. You want to go to a basketball game? Well, Game Time, you can search by team. You can search by venue. You can search by artist. Search by anything. Then you can pick by price point. It does not get any easier to use. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Well, I was working out today, getting a little pump on, trying to build a little muscle mass, look a little better. Need to lose about 15 for the wedding here in about 5 months. Just in general, just a little fat right now. More my diet than working out. But at the gym, the chiropractor, who is a big fan of the Bears, and he listens to Colin and I on Sunday nights. And he came up, I didn't even see him coming, and he just went on a rant about the Bears coaching staff. Like many Bears fans, they're not happy. And listen, you can't beat a dead horse. I said last year that was the time to make a change. Start fresh. They didn't do it. They're a cheap organization. Maybe polls believed in them. Maybe didn't. Maybe they just wanted to see what they had. Clearly, offensively, they look terrible. And it got me thinking because we spend a lot of time, and listen, as a former personnel guy, love talking players, love talking whose roster is better than other rosters. But this is not baseball. GMs don't control the lineup. They don't run the sport. In basketball, Daryl Morey's in charge, the coach isn't. In football, the coach, and specifically the coordinators, control so much. Part of the reason I didn't like Washington as much as some people, because I was like, I don't think their roster is good enough. Even if Jaden is like rookie of the year, I'm just like, I don't know if their roster is good enough. And through 2 weeks, or like week 2 and week 3, I didn't realize this till after I finished podcasting. They have not punted. They have not punted since week 1. Part of the reason last week they kicked so many field goals because in the red zone, their offensive line kept jumping off sides before the snap against the Giants. Last night clearly wasn't a problem. They were much more potent, scored a bunch of touchdowns. But it got me thinking about Dan Quinn. Think about Eberflus, who has done a complete kind of rebrand, grew out the beard, lengthened his hair, just tried to look cool. No one cares how you look in the NFL. Andy Reid's been overweight for 25 years. He's outcoached basically every guy in the league not named Belichick over that period of time. This is not college football. This is not college sports. Coach K's like 75 years old. He's still got dark black hair. It's like, Coach K, you're not recruiting anymore. You can let the gray come in. We don't need to use the just for men anymore. Saban, same thing. Which, listen, as someone that doesn't have any hair, no judgment, but part of the reason they do that, I think, is less about insecurity and more they want to look young for recruiting. And it matters and it works. No one cares how you look. No one cares where you're from in pro sports. Can you win? And I think when you look at Eberflus, it looks completely over his head. And when I started thinking about Dan Quinn, who obviously had ended poorly in Atlanta, but like was pretty successful. Took the Atlanta Falcons, a franchise that, let's face it, mostly has not been very successful for the majority of my life, to the Super Bowl and had a 28-3 lead. Partly because he's good at two things. One, he's great with players. Well, when he was the head coach for the Falcons, he had one of the highest priced quarterbacks who, not Manning Brady level star, but Matt Ryan was a pretty big NFL star. So he clearly can manage that guy, and he's pretty good at picking offensive coordinators. Think about the two guys he had for back-to-back, 4 years, essentially. 2 with Kyle and 2 with Steve Sarkisian. 2 pretty good offensive minds. Well, Cliff Kingsbury was, people forget this, but it was like, he's the Raiders offensive coordinator. I thought it, you thought it. It was being reported online. Then all of a sudden was like, not so fast. He's in Washington. And listen, maybe Cliff is destined to just be an OC. He's clearly pretty comfortable with that. And he's not a head coach. Pretty good offensive coordinator. He's pretty good with athletic quarterbacks. He knows what he's doing. Like, kind of has a track record, scoring a lot of points, college and the pros. So Dan Quinn, one, really good with players, has been successful leading an operation, and hires pretty good coordinators, specifically offense, where he's going to have nothing to do with it besides just managing the personalities. And you look at Eberflus, who hires Shane Waldron, and now it feels like they're both kind of swimming. And this just speaks to, and I make this mistake a lot, you can have, obviously, if you just have an all-star team, it's going to be hard to fuck that up. Like, I could coach Ohio State, I could coach Texas, and it'd be impossible for us to go 6-6. Probably wouldn't win the national championship, but we're going to win a lot of games on talent alone. In the NFL, the margins are really small. And everyone's going to have some weaknesses, and everyone's going to battle injuries. So when you're playing a team, regardless where they rank, like worst defense, best defense, you can win the game. It happens every single Sunday. Hell, so far this season, a lot of underdogs have been winning. But when your coach is over his head, I don't care how much talent your rookie quarterback has, how much talent your general manager has accumulated, you're dud. You have no shot. And to me, a big difference so far in the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick is one went to an organization with some people that know what they're doing. And the other one, like I've said this over and over, I believe in Ryan Poles. He's proven to be a good personnel guy. But as a GM, you're only as strong as your head coach. And you're only as strong as the coordinators he hires. Because in baseball, Billy Beane, I can set the lineup every single day. I can tell you exactly when to yank guys and when to put guys in. And that happens all over baseball. That's why the GMs are in control. That's why managers, a lot of them don't even make $1 million in the big leagues. But in football, coordinators make $3 and $4 million for a reason. They're really, really important. And on game day, every GM will say this. I do nothing. I just sit there and watch. It's why most times when you see the GM during the game, what are they doing? Most of them sit with the owner and are drinking a Diet Coke, eating some popcorn. Honestly, not that much different than me and you during a game. So you are so dependent on the guys running your organization, i.e. the coaches. And if you have the wrong one or you don't have a good enough one, unless you have Peyton Manning in his prime, you got no shot. So I think this is going to be a really, really rocky year for the Bears. Not because they don't have good players. Not because Caleb doesn't have a chance to be a really good player. But because their coaching staff sucks. In Washington, like, Dan Quinn's solid. And who knows? Maybe if Jaden hits, could like resurrect his career and we could be talking about like Dan Quinn one day, like we do Dan Campbell or Mike Tomlin or the Harbaugh brothers. Like, he's clearly a really good leader who's really good with players. Eberflus doesn't feel like any of those, especially just watching the Hard Knocks. He just seems like I'd have a beer with him or whatever, but I want that guy coaching my team? No chance. I love touchdowns. Tutties, taking it to the house, in for 6. I call them tugs. Whenever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, We do not care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. You know what's hard about the Cowboys is, like, during the season, like a GM will go on a podcast or, you know, do a radio interview or go on with McAfee or whatever. But that is few and far between. That is not a weekly occurrence. The moment the season starts, the coach and really the quarterback / players are the voice of your team and the coordinators. The GMs do not talk weekly, let alone some don't talk at all. And the majority of teams, we don't hear a peep from their owner. The message comes from the coach. And I find Jerry extremely entertaining. He has been a big reason the NFL, the way he looks at it, the ideas he has, the popularity of it becoming a TV show, and he treats the Cowboys like that. And the business right now in Dallas and in the NFL is booming. But for some reason, the Cowboys, which I don't want to say it's must win week 3 when you're 1-2 at the Giants, but you are a big favorite. But I look at their schedule after the Giants, at Steelers, Lions, at Niners, at Falcons, Philly, Houston. Like, that's, I mean, if you don't win this game, like, I might have to change my tune and be like, this team's not going to be a playoff team. But I do wonder, Mike McCarthy's not exactly Bill Walsh, but he clearly knows what he's doing. And Jerry, I understand, like, I cut the checks. I want to pick the players. And it's not like Jerry's banging out all the film. He is relying on other people. But he is obsessed with getting the credit. He is obsessed with being in the limelight. And I almost wonder if we've crossed the line of diminishing returns. Like, they had some moments these last couple of years. They weren't able to get it done. And now it feels like kind of over. And Jerry's 81 years old. And they have a head coach that does not have a contract that, let's face it, I don't think he'd get fired in the middle of the season, but this season can go off the rails really quickly. I wonder if it's impossible to win like this, because we have now 25 years of evidence when your owner / GM / just patriarch of everything that happens never shuts up, which is great if you're in the business I'm in, if you're a radio host in Dallas. Like, he talks after every single game, and then he does a weekly radio show. It's clearly not necessary. And I think it's pretty tangible now that it's counterproductive. It really is. Now, I'm not saying you have to go the extreme. Like, Belichick wouldn't let his coordinators talk. He never really even named guys coordinators, right? He would just let them call plays, but he would kind of circumvent that. Like, he was the only voice in New England. You could say that's a little overkill. Other teams that are successful let their OC, their DC, and their special teams coach talk. Hell, even let position coaches talk throughout the week. But having your owner speak multiple times a week, all season long, I don't think it's random that Dallas just hasn't been able to get over the hump. Obviously, there are specific instances, Dak playing bad, defense letting them down. It is hard to overcome just kind of the weird environment that is the Dallas Cowboys. I had a scouting buddy shoot me the screenshot of an article a couple years ago when Trevor Lawrence was coming out of college. And Trevor told Sports Illustrated, I'm not obsessed with football. And it kind of went away. We don't talk about it that much anymore. But after watching him play on Monday night in Buffalo, he played like a guy that's not obsessed with football. And it got me thinking. Most good players, well, hell, Two huge contracts that were signed this summer that I don't agree with, I would not have done, and I think were insane, were Tua and Trevor Lawrence. But let's use Tua as an example. When I think about Tua, since following his career at Alabama, and hell, even coming out of high school, knew people at the Alabama program, I would never say that all of his chips aren't in the middle of the table. Hell, you could argue like, hey, take some of those off, take a deep breath, take a step back. Being obsessed with football and giving 100% of your entire being to the sport has not been Tua's problem. His downfall, obviously, now is the concussions. He's just not talented enough. But all the best players at the quarterback position in recent memory, I would consider football junkies. Obviously, the two best of the last 25 years, Peyton and Tom, lived, breathed, slept. I mean, it was their life. It kind of still is. I mean, Tom's calling games now. Peyton Manning, football, he just walked out with Morgan Wallen in a full uni in Tennessee, put on a helmet. Those guys like football as much as they do their family. And this always happens during the draft. And this is such a big pet peeve of mine when the media pushes back. There aren't many jobs in this world that pay premiums like professional sports. And there aren't many positions in all of team sports that require as much effort mentally and physically as quarterback. Like in basketball, you're not studying 24/7. Show up, shoot around, you play. In football, you play once a week. 6 days a week is practice, film study, doing studying on your own, lifting, working on your body. It's like a 24/7 job for 6 months a year. And it's not like now in the off season, it's the 70s where you're just drinking beer and eating hot dogs. All these guys train, I would say at most they take a couple weeks off total. They are doing something for the majority of the year non-season, let alone once the season starts. And as a quarterback, every player gets an off day Tuesday. Most quarterbacks are doing some football-related activity, probably film study, game planning on Tuesday. Trevor Lawrence told you who he was. You know, a lot of times guys get in trouble a lot, and you go like, he's telling you who he is. Now, sometimes with guys, you're immature. Depending on what the issue was, he can mature and grow above it. I say it all the time. Tyrann Mathieu was kicked out of school, kicked out of LSU. He's literally been a team captain on every team he's ever been on. So it's like guys change, right? So I'm very hesitant with immaturity stuff. But when you tell me like football's not everything, under no circumstances could I pay you $200 million. Look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen begged for a football scholarship coming out of high school. People laughed at him. He went to junior college and then begged Fresno State to give him a scholarship. Tim DeRuyter would not. Had to go to Wyoming to play college football. Joe Burrow obviously was pretty good in high school. Urban Meyer said, you're never going to play here. I don't care. You ain't it. Had to transfer to LSU. Just look around the history of the position. All the best players. Even the flawed ones. I saw Favre today has Parkinson's. He was a flawed player. Would make some terrible decisions. The number one thing you would say to describe Brett Favre is I don't think he could have liked playing the game of football anymore. I would say no player in my life felt like he loved playing the game more. Tom and Peyton took it the most seriously, but there was a joy to Favre that I don't think any player has matched. Mahomes did early on in his career, but I think that was something special. And if you're not obsessed with football as the quarterback, I don't care how much talent you have. I will short your career. I've gone into these buildings every day for years. I worked in the Eagles facility, Andy Reid, 2 years. My third year, I did college scouting. The amount of time, effort, and energy it takes to even have a chance to be competitive is insane. I say it all the time. Football is Wall Street on grass. Like he told us years ago. So I'm kind of done talking about this in terms of the letdown with this player. I think it's poor management because they were the one. I don't blame him for signing the contract. If someone gave me $200 million, I would sign it too. But like, this is on the Jags as much as it's on Trevor Lawrence. He told everybody years ago, but he was so talented. And let's face it, these Clemson quarterbacks have been pretty underwhelming in terms of a lot of different elements. So I just think that sometimes when this football stuff during the draft, I mean, there are certain comments that should hold a little more weight than others. Like, no one could argue. Do you think Travis Hunter likes football? He plays 98% of the snaps in a game. There is no way you would go both ways in Division I college if you weren't obsessed with the sport. Obsessed. So it's like, I don't know, man. I hearing some of these stories about these guys getting huge amount of NIL money, and it's like, yeah, you go into the program, they're like, he's still the first guy here. His work ethic. I've heard some stories about Will Johnson at Michigan. It's like, how is this guy so serious? You know, making all this money in college, and it's like, I'd bet the farm on those type guys. Like, if you see the effort in which these guys are playing, knowing they're making this much money in college football, I feel pretty good about their love once it comes to the NFL. But look at all the top quarterbacks in the NFL. You don't question any of their like love of the sport. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. I mean, Herbert's out there limping around against the best defense in the league. So it's just CJ Stroud. I mean, you ever hear him talk about football? Dude's a junkie. The best athletes of my life have been addicted to the competition. Tiger, Jordan, Brady. LeBron's still grinding his ass off at 40 years old with $1 billion in the bank. This stuff's too hard. So if you ain't all in, and listen, let's face it, this speaks for most industries. There are some jobs you can get away with it at and still make a lot of money. I saw the dude that Starbucks hired as their CEO from Chipotle, kind of went viral. He gave the speech about his daily routine. It's like, get up, work out, take my kids to school, do some meetings, lunch, a couple more meetings, and I'm home every day at 5. And Starbucks gave him like $100 million, $25 million signing bonus and a private jet, and he got to move his office to his home in Newport. I'd say he's an outlier. I mean, he may be just so talented it doesn't matter. But most people are just, it takes a lot of energy and effort. And the only way you can consistently give the energy and effort, whether it's business, whether it's football, whether it's whatever you're doing, music, you got to be obsessed. And when you're not obsessed, it's going to weed you out because you're going to be going up against people that are. Okay, let's do a little Kauff on campus. God, I love college football. I saw that the Michigan USC game did the highest rating on a CBS day game in 10 years. I think well over 6 million people watched it. And this is 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. That's I mentioned this to Colin the other day, and it's not even arguable. Conference realignment, we can get mad at it. If you're of a certain age, it sucks. I mean, there are elements of it that suck, but there's no disputing this is better. Like, these teams used to play each other occasionally, but now that this is a conference game, USC versus Michigan, and it just felt bigger. Like conference realignment, you got Tennessee going to Oklahoma. How do you beat that? Texas is going to be playing Georgia. Oregon is going to be playing Ohio State. These matchups just would not have happened. And now they're happening every single year. So conference realignment pissed a lot of people off, especially us on the West Coast. But it's the right thing. Obviously, the TV networks had a heavy hand in this because they benefit the most. Ultimately, like Ohio State's going to make a ton of money no matter what. But you do this, everyone's making more money. And this is America. We like making more money. And we'll do whatever we have to do to make more money. And that's how college football happened, or the realignment happened. And that's the new era of college football. But it's working. And to me, the success that it's going to have over the next couple of years is only going to lead to more consolidation. And that's like the Pac 12 discussion that I see constantly is so dumb. I'm a Fresno State guy. I love Fresno State. I love Tim Skipper, who is quote unquote the interim coach. And if he wins this week at UNLV, if that AD does not give him a contract, I'm going to start tweeting, be pissed off because Tim Skipper deserves a 4-year deal today. But this Pac 12 discussion, adding these teams, and I got people in Fresno like, this is going to mean a lot. They're already playing each other. Like, where's the inventory? The Pac 12 died. The moment USC and UCLA and then Oregon and Utah and Colorado and the Arizona schools went their separate way, Washington State against San Diego State is not a valuable television property. It just is not. You can call it the Pac-12. You could call it Nike. You could call it my feet. It does not matter. It's still that game versus USC and Michigan, or Texas and Georgia, or Utah versus Oklahoma State. It ain't the same. And I just, this conversation won't die because Oregon State and Washington State, they own the right to the Pac-12. To me, it's completely irrelevant. You can call the conference whatever you want. I've said this forever. And this is no shot at these programs because, in fairness, they care. Like, I don't believe UCLA cares about football. I'm not saying the players and coaches. I'm talking about the school. I know for a fact the school, Cal, does not give a shit about football, let alone sports. Again, I'm not talking Wilcox and the players. I'm talking the university. Oregon State and Washington State care. They do. But their little towns that they play in and their markets are irrelevant. They do not matter. They belong playing Fresno State and Boise State and San Diego State. And those programs, if they're lucky, once every 5 years, might get a seat at the dance. But for the most give on just your average year, the door will not be open to them. And you know what? Doesn't deserve to be open to them. It's just the reality of this business and of college football. Because playing New Mexico and San Diego State and Utah State on a weekly basis is simply not the same as playing Texas A&M, even the bad SEC teams. It's a different world. But at the end of the day, this all comes back to television, and television does not care about Washington State and Oregon State. So you can call it the Pac-12. You could have just gone to the Mountain West. However the finances work, I don't believe they're a valuable property because the schools are still the schools. I do think, the crazy part about NIL, I was wrong about Jackson Arnold. I thought Jackson Arnold was going to be a really good player. Well, he not only got benched during the Tennessee game, Venables announced yesterday that Michael Hawkins Jr., who's like a smaller, he's like 6'1", but he's like an athletic runaround guy, is going to be their starting quarterback. And my first reaction during the game, and listen, Oklahoma's defense caused 2 turnovers in the first half. And then immediately Jackson Arnold turned the ball over again. One he fumbled and one he threw backwards. So he was a disaster. And their defense is clearly good. I think maybe I was just like, this is kind of crazy. Texting around today, it was like, no brainer. We didn't have a choice. Has to do it. And like the NIL, I think the pressure, once you start cutting guys' checks, if you do not perform, like whatever, see you later. Go to the transfer portal at the end of the year. We don't care. It's actually an easy way to be like, we don't even want this guy on the team anymore. And I'm not necessarily saying like Venables hasn't said that, but like you make a move like this, it's pretty clear the light at the end of the tunnel in the situation. Like if you're betting today, would Jackson Arnold, the guy that started the season at quarterback for Oklahoma, the guy that Venables and the staff basically told Dylan Gabriel, you're not going to start here next year. We're going with Jackson Arnold. 4 weeks into his Oklahoma starting career, it's already over. And we all know where this is headed. He'll be playing next year at like Syracuse or Wake Forest or like Utah. I mean, that's inevitable. And I kind of like that. I really do. And that's what makes, I think, college football, a lot of the transfer portal with some of the random positions, they're hit or miss. I do think the college football quarterback movement has made the sport much more interesting. Now, sometimes like, who's the dude? Riley Leonard, the quarterback at Notre Dame. I was texting with a couple scouting buddies that have gone through there. They're like, he's just worse this year than he was last year at Duke. They're like, I don't think it's crazy that they paid him a bunch of money. Like, he gets 7 figures. It's not like he's making $100,000. I mean, this is like a millionaire to be their starting quarterback. And he can barely throw. Like, I'm not necessarily a Notre Dame hater. I am a hater relative to the hype that they get, because then you watch them and you never quite see the hype match what you see on the field. But they went all in on the quarterback, and he's just not good enough. They will lose again. I don't think it's inconceivable that they lose twice. But if they go 10-2, and one of their losses in Northern Illinois, and let's say they lose to USC, their schedule is not very good. They don't play in a conference. You're not getting into the playoffs. You don't deserve to be in the playoffs. No one wants to see you in the playoffs. Kalen DuBois has a pretty big moment this weekend. Look at the guy's career record. He has won a lot. Now, a lot of these wins are at Sioux Falls, Fresno State. Obviously, the last 2 years at Washington really kind of validated his career, right? Once you go, it's like, Brian Kelly, did he get that much credit for winning in like one AA or Division II in Michigan early on in his career? A little bit. Then he went, I think, to Central or Western Michigan and got a little more credit. But then he went to Cincinnati, and they were in a BCS game. You're like, this guy's good. Then he goes to Notre Dame and he wins a lot. It's like, okay, this guy's winning everywhere. If Kalen DuBois wins this game, I think we have to talk about this guy as the best coach in college football. Obviously, he doesn't have the best resume. Kirby's won natties. Dabo's won natties. But like currently, Harbaugh's gone. I'm not putting Ryan Day up there. You win this game, first year at Alabama, you beat Georgia. I think he immediately has to be in the discussion. He loses this game, like, listen, he's just top 5, 6 coach, and we'll see what happens the rest of the season, how he looks in the playoffs. But you win this thing, this feels like an NFL game. I am really, really excited to watch, because let's face it, Georgia looked terrible against Kentucky. Now they get a bye week, so they get to come in rested. Alabama has played South Florida weird 2 years in a row. I mean, they almost lost 2 years ago when Saban was a coach. But I don't know. This is, I guess I would bet on Georgia, but one thing I've learned is Kalen DuBois is much better than you think. And every time you think, he's going to lose to Oregon, 9-point underdog. Beat the shit out of him in the Pac-12 championship. Oh, Sark, Texas, favored. See how that goes. Obviously, Michigan overwhelmed them, but he has an equal team. Or close to an equal. Like that Michigan-Washington game was not equal when it came to talent. The gap here, even if Georgia's slightly better, is still pretty small. Like, he's got NFL guys basically at most positions. And I'm interested to watch Kalen DuBois. And, this is obviously the national championship game is the biggest game he's ever coached. But this has got to be right up there near the second biggest game he's ever coached.